for a presentation and a program for the Audubon Society. Well, whatever.
Okay.
Welcome.
Okay. I know most of y'all. Thank you all for having me. And last minute thing, we're doing a lot of great things at OCTC. Misty Gish is working, getting pollinator garden in front of the science building. One of my colleagues is here tonight, Ms. Lalita Kanan, helping with a lot of different conservation biology projects. So a great colleague joining us as well. So I was a little frantic. We've actually, with not in the nature area, but across campus, through over 2 weeks, the students and I, maintenance, other folks, we planted 57 native trees across OCTC. So that's why my back's a little sore, and I got almost 56 in the ground by Thursday before all that rain came. We put the last one out on that peninsula. It's Oak Island, and we got 3 different oaks. Some made more like a little wet versus dry, so we'll see how we'll make it. When you come in that north side, we planted some younger oaks, different ones. And basically I was limited to what I could get at that time. You know, if I bought them now, but we have some different of the white oak group, the red oak group, but then tulip trees, eastern redbud, pecan, things like that. So with help of my students, but also maintenance, when we have rain throughout 2 months, they actually dug with the backhoe. Otherwise, we would not be able to break into the ground. So pretty exciting in that respect. So kind of got that together before the presentation on this side, but it's pretty exciting. That was even part of the nature, or part of the nature area, which we are, of course, encouraging wildlife and plants, everything out there, Virginia Miles. So, let's see if my screen should hopefully be coming up. Let's see. Screen's not. Yeah, I had it on. Maybe it just turns off after a period of time.
There you go.
Is it on? Okay. All right. So appreciate you all coming out today. I was a little hesitant at first giving the presentation because this is so new that I'll probably not be able to answer a lot of your questions, but pretty excited on this. So it kind of came through a grant, and from supporting from Cargill, we're talking about this, and Cargill reached out to Stacy Ramey Potts, and she sent my name to them about a potential grant. And I was looking on a website of what's going on Murray and their tower that they have down in Murray State. So that's when it kind of came about with this MOTUS wildlife tracking tower at OCTC. So a grant from Cargill, I'll talk about this. There's a bird here, the piping plover, that actually has a tag on that. So what is this MOTUS system? All the clickers work when they're supposed to. All right. So what we have, it's an international collaborative research network that uses coordinated automated radio telemetry to track the movement and behavior of flying organisms. We got some British English there. Affixed with digitally coded radio transmitters. So MOTUS is this wildlife tracking system based out of Birds of Canada, and it's a system that came about in 2012. So this tagging is not related to the GPS, but it's actually these towers that are placed. So starting in 2012. So researchers are using these miniaturized little transmitters that are on birds, bats, even some insects, and there's a tower network through the Americas and actually across the world associated with this. So individuals can be tracked continuously, simultaneously across landscapes over a single frequency or two, over a broad geographic scale, and a repository of data that all comes together. So I actually have a video, so I'm showing a couple of videos because it does better than what I'm talking about. So this is the MOTUS wildlife tracking system. Maybe you have a young thrush right here.
Birds have the power to touch our hearts with their beauty and songs, to surprise and fascinate us with their behavior, to inspire us with amazing feats of strength and endurance. Some songbirds migrate thousands of kilometers every year in challenging conditions. Birds play critical roles in our ecosystems. They pollinate plants and spread seeds. They help control insects. Birds are also valuable indicators of change. Many populations have been seriously declining for decades. 1/3 of North American bird species need urgent conservation action to avoid extinction. We have to act now to protect the habitats and systems that support all life on Earth. But how? Scientists must unlock the mysteries of migratory birds and study their movements on breeding grounds, along migration routes, and in wintering areas. The MOTUS wildlife tracking system uses tiny tracking devices and a network of hundreds of receiving stations strategically located throughout the Western Hemisphere. MOTUS is yielding spectacular discoveries. Now, researchers can safely track bird movements over vast distances and with incredible detail to pinpoint the greatest threats to vulnerable species. The results help us identify conservation priorities and direct efforts and funds for maximum impact. Get involved today. You can help us conserve bird populations and habitats to ensure healthier environments for wildlife and for people. We have the power to make a big difference with your support.
So really interesting kind of novel system, and I know some of you folks have been familiar with this. But so before this, you could do your bird banding, that you have to actually get those birds back in the hand. You could use the different GPS telemetry or putting these radio tags on there, but it's limited by the size of the battery for that transmitter. There's a specific type of lifespan associated with that. And if they're GPS, what I understand with some of the radio telemetry, you've got to have a big animal to do that. So maybe sharks, wolves, moose, coyotes, sheep, something big. So you're not going to get a lot of these GPS tags that will actually go to satellites. So this is a network of towers that's going to be involved with it. And OCTC's role is not right at this time to do any tagging of the wildlife, but just actually to have a tower. So it's a collaborative research network, pretty exciting to be associated with this. So there's more towers here, but this is the example of the different towers that are marked in blue. So there's the nano tag, the small tag actually on the bird. Some could be tagged on butterflies, red knots, a lot of the different ones we associate with this. So when they go by the tower, that'll pick up that information. You get data on the bird's arrival, departure, length of stay, you know, if they're right within that certain area, what type of habitat they're using. So as of May 2023, there are 1,200 stations worldwide across 31 countries. There's more in the New World of the Americas, but there's some in Asia, some in Africa, but especially in North and South America, there's quite a bit of those. So the information we can get, you know, is very valuable, involving conservation, research, tracking animal movements. Most of it is birds, but other things can be tracked as well. And I thought this was an interesting figure. I pulled off the MOTUS website as well. The different stations are probably not necessarily up to date, but the story, the migratory of the red knot going from Patagonia up into Canada, some of that migration is pretty amazing. Some will actually go out across the Atlantic. Some could be short-term or small studies, like if they're doing something in Ontario, if they're looking at migratory movements within that small area. But they just have examples of the black-polled warbler, silver-haired bat, monarch butterfly that's migrating right now. And of course, the animals have to be tagged, but more and more each year, researchers are tagging these animals. And Owensboro will be one of the stations involved with that. And there's a dragonfly on the side, but only really knew much about this northern wheat ear bird, which is really one of the most fascinating migratory pathways if we look at this. So this northern wheat ear, there is a population in eastern way far North America, and a separate population in western North America. So, but they both will migrate and go to Africa. So this population will go down Europe and go down this way. The ones from Alaska and Western Canada will come across Asia. So those populations are separate. I don't know if there's any spill through. So it's pretty interesting about that biology, about this northern wheat ear. So pretty amazing that where did it start at? It started at the east or the west, but they're up there in North America, but they both go to Africa, but one goes through Asia and the other comes this way. So the MOTUS will help us understand more about the migratory pathways associated with those. So they do have a tag, they have a battery. I want to do a little more research, how long those batteries actually last. I don't know if the battery's turned on when they go next to a station, but you know, I'm still looking at a lot of research associated with this. So here's an example I pulled off, I think, the Smithsonian Magazine's website. This is a young black tern, has a nano tag from Lake St. Clair, Michigan. Also does have leg bands. And of course, this tagging information can help understand about breeding, migration, non-breeding locations, etc. So these tags, I've not actually put these on any birds before. I have put leg bands on, but they can be affixed to those animals using glue, sutures, or a variety of harness designs. So kind of on that. An interesting fact, even though a black tern is not considered a songbird, but songbirds weigh from 10 to 30 grams, which is about 0.3 to 1 ounce. So that's what the birds weigh, but tags can range from 0.2 to 2.6 grams. So what I've understood on things, like if you're going to affix something to an animal, that it needs to be an animal that's flying probably about 2% of its weight or lower. So an animal that's not flying, you know, be lower in that respect. So pretty exciting to associate with some of these, looking at that tagging. So Low Tech is one of the companies. I tried to find that out, but I didn't actually find the price per tag. I don't know if that's a big paper clip or a small paper clip. Anyway, that's a paper
It's a paper clip.
It could be the big or small, but pretty interesting. And that tag is putting out a certain frequency. We'll know that's the individual bird. So we'll know that that's that black tern, and it was pretty exciting to be part of the network. I believe all that information is shared. So, you know, one bird's picked up here, and go, you know, to go somewhere else. So the miniaturization. So we think about all the different things in computers and things are smaller. That's helping with wildlife and birds and research and things on that. So even things for insects, the green darner dragonfly. I'm not sure about their migratory patterns, but I know some places, I believe in Asia, Europe or Africa, some of the dragonflies will do some more of the migratory behavior on some. I think about here in the Americas, I'm thinking more about the monarch, and they've actually had some of those affixed to that. So be interesting to know the weight of that dragonfly and the actual percentage associated with that. So some station examples I pulled off the MOTUS website. So some can be basically more wilderness areas, but you have an antenna, you have a receiver where the information can go, then you'll have a power source. Some may be tied to solar sources. On the campus OCTC, we'll have internet, we'll have power, but some, I think the closest one to us, I want to go visit, I think is Hovey Lake Fish and Wildlife area, kind of where the very southwest tip of Indiana, where the Wabash will dump into Ohio. So various stations we have here, power source, receiver, and antenna. The antennas, I think there's 2 types that they'll always have, so they're picking up the 2 potential frequencies all those tags will be on. So the towers can pick up tagged animals from 9 to 12 miles away. And what's interesting with these, and I forgot a lot about some things radio telemetry, that you're putting a signal out, not 360, but it's usually one direction then the opposite direction. So we want to kind of go east or northeast or southeast, but we don't want to kind of go north-south with our direction, because things that are migrating, they're probably not going to hit it, but if you can kind of get east-west or a little bit off of that, you're going to be hitting any animals that are going through. So between 9 to 12 miles away. So a whole research community, the network, you get the tags will go into this information database. I pulled this from the MOTUS website. So help with conservation, policy, management, conservation action. When they're migrating, we think about the birds migrating at night through certain pathways. Should we put this skyscraper here where all these birds are migrating through? So pretty exciting on that respect for some of that information. So some could be smaller physical or local studies versus regional. So why OCTC? So, you know, it was just kind of the perfect storm when I got that email from Stacy. He's like, oh, there might be interest in funding. I was actually, should have been working, but I was actually surfing Facebook. And at that exact moment was I saw Murray State's website, and they found with the Hancock Biological Station, their tower picked up their first bird. I think it was a nighthawk, not a nighthawk, it was a whippoorwill. So probably down, yep, Murray State Station right there. So then it's like, oh, we do this grant, and be careful what you ask for, you just might get it. So now I'm scrambling to kind of figure out what's going on. So this map's probably pretty accurate. So we are right here. That's Hovey Lake. This is the Ohio River. There's some up in Bloomington. There's some up in southern Indiana. You go east. I think that's at Bernheim. They've got some studies and stations. Bowling Green, the Green River Reserve, forest down there. Probably in between the lakes, maybe some associated with Austin Peay. Then we have a good network there, and some actually in eastern Kentucky. So looked at the map, we kind of fill that void, that hole associated with that. Yeah, there could be one at Patoka Lake. Is that where?
Yeah, I thought
Maybe
maybe that
here?
time, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that might be.
Yeah. So yeah, it looks like there's a little lowland area in there. This one could be maybe one of the wildlife refuge. I'm not really sure, but you can.
Like Goose Pond?
Yeah. Goose Pond.
Yeah,
So
it's too far east for Goose Pond.
is it okay?
Goose Pond's
Closer. There's the.
near Linton, which is further west.
Okay.
Well,
It's too far north for Patoka also.
it's due east of Sullivan, which
Okay.
is south of
Is that too
Tickle.
far north for Patoka?
It might be, I'm guessing, I don't know, might be,
But you have those networks and like.
yeah.
Yeah,
Some
if you
people have
go-
a lot of-
If you go up 69 and go to Goose Pond, you get off 69 and go west, not east.
Well, that's what it
Okay.
So
shows.
it can't be Goose Pond.
Well, anyway, we fill in a gap right here in Owensboro for things across the river. So the funding, so Cargill, we filled out a Cargill Cares grant application, and our grant writer, Christy Minkiff, I think any university, anybody would just be great to have her. I mean, she just pulled things together. To be careful if you're involved with a grant application with her, you might get it, then you have to implement. I'm excited about this. I would just kind of get my mindset just coming off planting 57 trees, so to kind of go in this direction. So we applied for this, and they had like an Earth Day environmental grant for $10,000. So what I understand, it doesn't expire, so we're still trying to get all the steps, everything associated, get going. So Cargill, what I understand, now owns Owensboro Grain. So we did the fancy check ceremony. There's the president, there's me with the bald head, a few of the Cargill folks, then our foundation officer, Cindy Warren, there on the end. And I'm just going to the website with Cargill. I don't know much about the organization, but looking at the website, things are pretty impressive for that organization who owns Owensboro Grain, Agriculture and Climate Change. So an organization that acknowledges that climate change is something that's occurring, and whether it's affecting agriculture or other things in life. Feeding Hope, Fighting Hunger. They gave us our $10,000. Healthy Animals, Safer World. Every drop counts. We look in at water use in agriculture. So I'm not sure within the last year or two when they obtained ownership of Owensboro Grain, but would not happen without their funding. So pretty exciting to be associated with that, to kind of go forward. And with it too, to kind of understand things with benefiting agricultural and sustainability, Davis County is, if you look at the acreage, we got urban area, you have some wild areas, but a good chunk is agriculture. So there's plants and animals. How can we feed the world and the animals that we eat, but also have some of these wild spaces as well? Let's see. So media. So as soon as we got this out there, Owensboro Times wanted to do an article, and I got all nervous about that, and then we got a TV spot associated with that. I was fit to be tied that day. I do like attention doing things, but on TV seems permanent, and I'm actually going to show you all that, but I was so nervous during the day. After I did the TV segment, my family watched, it's like, I'm not watching this. It's like when you see yourself on video or you hear yourself, it's just like, I almost can't stand it. So I'm going to show it now. I haven't watched it in weeks, so if I'm uncomfortable, it's okay. So so this was in August, the TV spot associated with this. So.
A grant is allowing Owensboro Community and Technical College to expand the scope of how students are able to study animals. The community college will use the money to install a wildlife tower to track migration patterns. Eyewitness News' Sydney Davis has more tonight from the project's director.
Whenever we get the first species, the first individual bird, bat, whatever hits the station, this will be pretty exciting.
In April, Owensboro Community and Technical College's Dr. Micah Perkins felt so strong about the diversity of Owensboro's wildlife that he applied for a grant to install a MOTUS wildlife tower. They were approved and will be the first community college in the state and city to have one. The tower allows students to dive into another layer of learning about birds, bats, and insects.
The MOTUS is Latin for movement, so this involves these small little nano tags placed on wildlife species that are migrating through. And we will have this station established here at OCTC that will help track in their movement.
It's being made possible by a $10,000 grant through Cargill, the owner of Owensboro Grain Company. Once the animal comes within 12 miles of the tower, it will store data on their habitat, which direction they travel, and how long they typically stay in the area. The community college will be one of over 1,000 MOTUS tower stations in 31 countries.
Anything what we call the neotropical migrant songbirds. They spend their winters in Central and South America. Then they come up to North America to do the breeding. And a lot of those are imperiled and they're declining, and that's going to help us understand some of those. So from different warblers, vireos, thrushes, even birds we consider more common, robins.
In fact, Dr. Perkins says that is the sound of South America's indigo bunting. If you look closely, you can see the bird's turquoise feathers. The professor says they're still deciding on the location for the 30-foot tower, but will aim to install it this fall. He's most interested in what they'll discover after hours.
At night, there could be thousands of songbirds migrating through this area that we're not even paying attention to.
In Owensboro, Sydney Davis, Eyewitness News.
It worked out great because, the indigo bunting, and she had the camera. I was like, there's no way she just videoed it, and it was perfect, and it was in there. So
because it was easy to see the geese.
yeah, it's like had the. So that was pretty exciting in that respect. So, but then now we got to kind of get this grant moving, get it off the ground. So we got the media. So where we're on now, so with the grant, we kind of established a project called the OCTC Cargill MOTUS Wildlife Tracking Student Engagement Project. So we are, it's going to be student involved. So we get students kind of involved with the research and migration and learn about birds even before we maybe get the first one, first bird picked up. What I was talking with some of the coordinators, they're based out of South Carolina, says we can get them in spring migration, but he says you'll get a lot in the fall. Basically because a lot of people, maybe the researchers in North America are doing their summer research, tagging them, and then you'll get more as you're going through. So I was talking with the folks at Birds of Canada, but we do have some folks in the United States that help us get the station up and running. So I'm interested in the biology, but we do have the maintenance staff and others to help you actually establish it. Because on the technology end, my expertise is very limited. I'll follow those directions. So we're in the initial stages. So there's an old radio tower here. We'll take the antenna off, and if you watch that video, it was actually right behind my head on that one. We're thinking of establishing here, but we have to make sure the direction is not too close to the metal roof and is about 6 to 7 feet up. So I'm worried about this roof right here. This antenna is no longer used, but we may be able to use that tower. It's right next to our bookstore. There's some other potential locations. That's on top of our library. There's another pinnacle here, but there's actually a roof a flat roof that's on the, that's not there on the top of that roof that we maybe will shoot through and get our 180 in each direction. So finalizing for that. So I'm kind of thinking the flat roof, even this tower may work, but I want to think about if we have to do any repairs or anything. If it's on a flat roof, we could actually walk out, but we want to make sure it's not too close to the metal, and we have to maybe do some tests to make sure air conditioners and other things are not making any type of interference associated with that.
Are you considering collaborations with other people that might have taller buildings in the city?
Possibly, if, are you guys offering maybe some, you know?
Science building's 5 stories tall.
Yeah, so if that's something
Flat
possibly.
roof. So,
Yeah, that's where you have your planetariums at, right, and everything.
yeah.
And it's something that, like, we could work with. This could be, this may not work here, it could be, you know, the place in town. There's Southeast Campus at OCTC, but I'm willing to open with collaborators. I know some of John's students may be interested in, we can involve and look at this. It'd just be exciting to know that this gray cap bird's migrating through, where was it tagged, and okay, pick back up in Belize, and we see it in Michigan and things like that, so.
John had nothing to do with it, it was my idea.
Yeah, I know, it's so art and science. We have definitely collaborators associated with that, so even kind of like the ones with a smaller working team there at the college, but I'm open. It's something that, you know, pretty exciting to kind of move forward on that respect, so. So still looking at purchasing materials. What I understand, which I don't understand all of this just yet, but there will be almost 2 antennas up there because there's some that were picking up the 166 megahertz and the others 434. That all the animals tagged should be at both of those. And you've got the antenna, you've got the pole, sort of the receiver, and you have power associated with that. So I believe this is probably one of the, I think the Eastern Phoebes that did hang out at the college quite a bit. Misty Gish, one of our faculty members, took this picture here, and I believe the Eastern Phoebe will winter more in the southern United States a little further. So not one of those long distance migrants, but still a migrant. Picking up other birds too, that we don't think about robins, and robins will migrate. The ones we have in the winter may not be the same ones here in the spring associated with that. So this is actually on our horse pasture right next to Virginia Miles Nature Area, so probably not getting shocked, you're not touching that wire, and, you know, not grounding himself. But pretty exciting about the potential. It's just getting it there. Respect, I just like to have things done. So all the groundwork and stuff to get it, you know, I should enjoy that a little more, but pretty tree planter behind me, getting going in this respect and getting students involved with that. And I think it's great PR for the college, but also the community of like you think of conservation, that most communities won't have that, have something like this that, you know, something could be tagged in Argentina or the deep Amazon, and, you know, it shows up here as it just goes by the tower or stays here on, in Owensboro. Who knows, the Virginia Miles Walk, you could see something with a tag or something. You know, that would be kind of few and far between, but still definitely possible. And I think with this research expanding, the more and more animals that are tagged, we'll start to pick up a lot more. But excited from different things, not even from birds, but looking at bats and their decline, but also the monarch butterfly, you know, and looking at some of those to kind of go through and hit from the station. So kind of ramble on different things. I just know a little bit to get started, but hopefully we will have things purchased and we'll have it, you know, all established and all the bugs worked out by the spring semester in January, February. So I'm pretty excited in that respect. So
The concentration seemed to be in the Mississippi Flyway or the East Coast. Is there, didn't seem very many.
Yeah, it seemed like
so on that map.
on that one map, if it was.
Yep. And I was just, if that's the next slide.
Oh, this one?
No,
No.
the
Well,
other direction, there.
There.
yeah, this one I don't think is up to date. I actually can probably pull to see where, we'll go to the MOTUS website. And they'll have resources, station deployment. They should have hopefully an up-to-date map of those. Should have had that. Install station.
Oh, you're fine.
But I'm intrigued
You
as
can make it
well.
up. You can make it up of if there's more Canadian migration from the Mississippi Flyway than from the east or California coast.
Yeah, what I've kind of looked at, I've not looked at all the latest data, but I know there's really gaps in, like, I know I've sort of seen a bunch of stations near Salt Lake, but a good chunk of Wyoming's
Sure,
not
because they're the
covered,
river up
and
there.
Montana's not. So some areas that I think where you're probably gonna have more stations where you have more people. So I think the east, East United States, I think the West Coast will have more, but then some of those stations that may be a little more remote, from those remote areas. So
Yep.
Micah?
yeah.
Is there some plan for to do more tagging? I realize that you're
Yeah.
gonna work on existing
Yeah.
tags. When we talked to the folks at Bernheim, maybe 4 years ago or so, when the guy came, and it was all brand new, but they were actually tagging birds there as well as having a station. And I wondered if Bowling Green or any of the other Kentucky MOTUS stations were actually creating tags.
Yeah, I don't know, and it's, I would imagine that you'd probably need a master banding permit, and some of that permitting with birds, you really need to work with people that really work with that with years, and it's,
I mean, that might
maybe
be step
Bernheim.
4 or 5
Right.
in this
Yeah.
sequence.
because I don't know if there's some master banders at, Western Kentucky, but I know there's a gentleman up in Evansville, Scott, but he does.
There's somebody that always does bird banding
Yeah.
at Audubon for the Ohio Valley Birding Festival.
Right, I believe that's Scott from up in
Yes.
Indiana. And I know that to get that for birds, you have to work so many years under a master bander, just so not anybody's out there catching birds and doing that. So I've done a little bit of banding, but I've never spent enough time to even become an assistant.
So that would be one of the obstacles to getting
Right.
that going here.
Right, because some may have that local
It
project
takes
there
time to
going on,
get
yeah.
somebody at that level of expertise.
Right, yeah. So on some, we could go that route and do like a local project, but then you release the birds and you could track them through time. So some I know there's a lot of studies up in the Ontario area that they'll look at that local and that regional area, but then that's their main study area. And they have a lot of stations, but then they can pick the data up through throughout the, the whole continent. And I thought, like, for mine, that, even, I'd gotta figure out how much the tags are, but interested in the monarch butterfly or some things for insects. Even, I probably think Fish and Wildlife too, if you're collecting insects, they want to know, but it's not highly regulated that, you catch a monarch versus, trapping and studying sandhill cranes. They're very different, something to respect on that. But I'm just intrigued, what the cost would be, but, if people want to partner, it'd be interesting to look at with some research, yeah.
Well,
Research
It was
studies
discussed
involved.
at the
the Kentucky Audubon Council donated $5,000 to Bernheim just for the tagging,
Mhm.
because each tag is very expensive.
Yeah, I bet they probably have master banders there that
Yeah.
do a lot of that bird research.
Oh, I'm sure at Bernheim they do,
Mhm.
which might be a resource.
Yeah, because I've had some permits before white nose syndrome hit for the bats, and then
Mhm.
now getting some of the permits that are kind of a little tricky in a sense that some of the independent agencies are really, I don't know, they're doing it for the money, but I think it's a little more difficult than it was 17 years ago to get those bat permits because with white nose syndrome, and where some of that money and the funding is going for those environmental groups. But just from, it could expand from birds or insects or different things involved with it, but I'm interested in collaborators, and I think for the tagging, they may want, whether you're just tagging ones going through the migratory pathways or you're doing some sort of research study, which some may be doing in that Ontario area, that they could be studying birds that are not migrating but looking at movement patterns, maybe with some woodpecker species across that landscape that are being pinging on those different towers. But yeah, the potential is pretty exciting. I just intrigued on how much those the tags actually are. Imagine they're pretty bit pricey, but just to be part of this overall network is kind of where I'm thinking, coming out of snake frog mode, and they don't go these migratory pathways. Some will get up and move, but not like birds in a sense. But it's interesting to see how technologies open this up.
Well, when you think about the fact that before this kind of technology was developed, the only way to track the migration was to actually tag a bird and see it and pick it up and read, or use some kind of optical enhancement in order to read what the tag number was. That's the only way
you give it your hand, or like the shorebirds, like that red knot.
Right.
One was tagged in '95 and lived, I think, 20 years. I forget the story of that actually, the bird, but it was this individual bird, and they could tell from the specific banding, like the orange, white in the bands. But it's actually called the moon bird because it would go from Patagonia to here, and that bird went so many times, it was almost 200,000 miles that it went to they tracked it. They get it here on the coast, and they get it up in Delaware Bay, then up north, and they would be able to spot, birders just like us would spot it with spotting scopes, and they could see the exact, it was actually a really interesting book, but the story of, it's called the moon bird, that went 200-some thousand miles, and they believe it's probably passed on now. I think it was first tagged in '95, but probably 15, 20 years that bird, and it gave the information that that population of red knots, and just that migration. If you look at that pathway on one that they do, as we always kind of see the warped area of the Earth because it's actually curved, they go way out over the Atlantic, and I think when they go, they'll hit a coast here in South America. So instead of going here, it's shorter for them just not even touch down, just go straight. But when they go back north, they're hitting Delaware Bay and the Chesapeake.
Right.
Rely
Laverne
on.
and I saw them on the eastern coast of Virginia.
That's pretty awesome. They rely on horseshoe crab eggs.
Yep.
Pretty amazing, and then going all the way to the top. So if you didn't have the bands or the scopes, you really wouldn't know. But some of those larger animals, I've never done that before, but you could tag sea turtles or sharks, and the GPS tags, and they'll track a shark going from the Pacific, all the way that way over to South America or South Africa. Pretty exciting on that respect. But talking to the gentleman, my contacts in South Carolina said I'd be pretty confident that, oh yeah, you'll probably get birds, probably in the fall. So I think I'd be
Well,
pretty
the thing
giddy
is, too,
associated with that.
we're not birding at night,
Mhm.
and this is an opportunity to see what's coming over at night.
Yeah, go ahead.
How can we find out what that's picking up? Is there any kind of app or a website?
There
or a
might be,
uniform
I'll know as
newsletter?
we register that station, but I think it's common knowledge, so you,
So we could look up the one in Bowling Green.
possibly, so if
the
it's
one in
not,
Bernheim.
yeah, if it's not public, I think you could, as we get the station registered, I could get that information to you, but it may just be able to share the information, but I'm not sure if they do or not, so. But, I'm sharing the heck out of the information when we get the birds, okay, this is our first bird, and that's part of the responsibility of the grant too, and probably within our social media, we're always gonna say car deal support, but putting out, okay, we got our first bird of, scarlet tanager or, something like that, and we'll know where it was tagged, okay, it was a research study in Colombia, or it was tagged in Tennessee or something like that, so. Okay.
Mike, if you find a dead bird with a transmitter on it, should that be brought to you?
We can, and I could contact with him, so if you'd find one, which I think would be kind of rare, but with hitting the windows is definitely possible.
Oh, yeah.
Because I guess if it doesn't hit a tower, we'll never know where it is, I would expect, because the tower has to pick that up. But yeah, that's, you get that information to me, and I wish I had more information. I'm just kind of the tip of the iceberg, getting things started, and maybe we could do like yearly updates, and okay, now I know what I'm talking about on that respect, so it's, on that. Do we have another question? I don't know if we have, go ahead.
Do we store the data here, or will it be shared automatically?
I think it's shared automatically, so it might have to be with some sort of login, but I think it's going to be almost instantaneous when it happens. What I've been doing the reading, if it's not hooked up to a network, you may have to go download the data, something like that. But I think what we understand, when we have the receiver, we'll have Wi-Fi, we'll have power, and that'll be almost instantaneous when they're coming through. But if you have a tower, you are miles and miles away from any power, and I don't know if you can go to a satellite, but it may just download that information on the receiver. You may have to go and download that information. So, but who knows with advances in technology of, we think of everything's going to be tied to satellites. We think of dead zones out in areas where we don't have that, but with satellite technology, within years, decades, we will probably go everywhere on the planet and have good Wi-Fi in a sense, or good reception, not Wi-Fi, but.
Micah, I have two suggestions.
Okay.
In terms of location, I've been thinking about this since you talked about it. There are two places in town that might be possibilities. One is a hospital, which is 9 stories high.
Yeah.
And it used to advertise that they had some affiliation with the Audubon Society National, and somebody might be open to something like this. I don't know anybody specifically at the hospital. The other one is the Hampton Inn. And we went to the opening of the Hampton Inn, and they were so proud of their connection with ecology and the recycling of carpeting and blah, blah, blah. And the fellow who owns that is a good friend of Aloma Dew.
Yeah, okay.
And do you know Aloma?
Yeah.
Yeah. You might talk to them about it, and because it's up. I know that when we had somebody painting that big parrot-like bird on the side of the building downtown. Anyway, they allowed us to go up on the roof, and they were very open to anything that we wanted to do. And you might think about either one of those, because they're high. They're high, and you could put your tower on top of them, either one of them, and you might get better reception than somewhere else.
Yeah, so I want to think about the height, they just always want to say it needs to clear
Right.
the buildings and.
But these are on top
trees.
of, but
Top of
this would be
buildings.
on top of the buildings, on the roof. And if you have a tower that goes up above that, that would be pretty much clear,
Yeah, there'd be nothing.
pretty much all
around that.
downtown.
And that
And across-
Hampton
across
Inn's
the
right on the
river.
river, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, it's an idea.
Yeah, definitely that, because we're working out the bugs of where that station
Yeah.
can go, so.
I looked up the MOTUS thing at Bernheim, and they actually have 3 tracking stations there, which I think is really unusual, given that there's what, a 9-mile radius? I'm not, of course,
Yeah.
they've got 16,000 acres, so I guess they placed them. But they're only focusing on, I think it's 4 species of birds with their tagging.
Okay.
So.
Would they say what they are?
Louisiana water thrush, the Kentucky warbler, and the indigo bunting are listed. So those are the ones that in the first year they actually had pings from,
Okay.
of the ones that they were doing.
So they're probably doing a local research study with it too, and then
But
when
it would
other
be
stations can
interesting.
benefit.
Andrew Berry is the guy that came and talked about it here.
Okay.
And you might want to connect
Andrew
with
Berry,
him and
okay.
just let him know that you're doing this.
Yeah, definitely, because I like to see other stations, and I'm by no
Right.
means an expert associated with them.
Sounds like a field trip.
Yeah.
And it gives some perspective about the technology. The Greatest Bird Week, if you've been to the Greatest Bird Week up on Lake Erie
Yeah,
Toledo.
Lake Erie.
There's, the most they tracked was 2.25 million birds overnight, was the largest group that the GPS weather radar was tracking at night. So 2.2 million birds during the heavy migration of the Mississippi
It'd be
Flyway going
interesting.
over Toledo.
It's interesting
one
to see why
evening.
they wouldn't have a MOTUS station up there at Black Swan.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure they
That'd be
do.
ideal.
But that's just all a swarm of unknowns, so you would assume.
Right, yeah.
But you would assume you'd start pinging birds. If there's that many birds coming through and migrating
Right.
back and
There
forth,
must be some.
there's
Yeah.
gonna be.
I do want to tag as many birds as you can, but then you'd want trained professionals catching those birds too, so they'd be.
With 2 million, just reach up
Yeah,
and grab them.
just grab them, that was fine. But hopefully this will just give us some information that we have not known before. Especially about areas they're coming back to. I always hear about site fidelity of a bird or a brown thrashers from an area, then move and come back and its offspring, wherever's raised within that general area. May not be that same block, but within that same general area. And of course, we will have some information of like genetics, but we'll have definitely the information of those individual birds, and if they collect other information about that, of course sex, but the overall reproductive condition and any genetic information they can have to those is pretty exciting on that respect. So you can't forget the bats and the insects too, that definitely rely on those, but it's just pretty exciting to be involved with that, and kind of going forward, and just know little information just to be dangerous, and when it's up and running, I'll let y'all know. It'd be pretty exciting in that respect. I was a little worried, okay, we get it up, then we wait years without a bird, but or it could just immediately happen. But, think about migration, we're not right on the Mississippi, but we have a lot of the lakes and a lot of different water areas around here. Our Ohio River goes east-west, but you guys do a lot of bird watching too. They're migrating through, so whether it's more of an agricultural landscape on the western end of the state. So.
We get our fair share of sandhills.
Yeah, yeah.
And that means whoopers.
Yes. And as if you on sandhill cranes, I went to grad school in Nebraska, but if there's a new book on sandhill cranes coming out this fall, whooping cranes. I think his last name's Forsberg, I think, and it's a really neat book. So it'd be a Christmas gift for someone. But Google Nebraska book. I think the last name's Forsberg, but a lot of sandhill cranes and some whooping cranes that'll pop up in there, and pretty exciting across. There's not a lot in Nebraska, but you got the Platte River, which they say is a mile wide but an inch deep, and some of the most centralized of the sandhill cranes that are going through in that migration is pretty exciting to be part of. So,
All right.
thank you all.
Hey, I've got two short announcements. One, can you type in www.birdpoty? I forgot to make a couple announcements in the first introductions. One, that's the photographer of the year, Bird.